Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for your singing. And as we come and we offer up prayers this morning to our God, it is good to be together. My name is Chris Pappenfus. I'm one of the pastors here on staff. We want to welcome you on this Labor Day weekend, and we are grateful for work, and we're grateful for a day off from work. As a parent, I am grateful that with Labor Day means that all of our teachers are going to soon be going back to work, and I get to send my kids off to them. Yes. every parent says yes, and every teacher says, oh, Lord, help me. Let's, as we did for Pray for Kennedy and Serve Kennedy, let's remember to lift up our teachers, our administrators up in prayer as they start another year here as well. This morning, we are going to be starting a series that's really focused on the Sermon on the Mount, which is Jesus' most well-known sermon. And I would like us to imagine this morning that we are really gathering for class at the feet of Rabbi Yeshua, the feet of Jesus, as we look to our teacher and invite him to teach us. Imagine that we will have already heard about this incredible teacher that's kind of shown up in our community. We've already seen great crowds of people who heard that this teacher also has the gift of healing, and this teacher would go and heal the most incurable diseases and the conditions that people said this is a lifelong condition. And Jesus, just by speaking a word or placing a hand on that person, would turn that condition around. This is an upside down kind of teacher that has shown up. And we are all gathering together to listen to this rabbi. In Matthew, he records this sermon. We're going to be spending the next 8 weeks here looking at this Sermon on the Mount found in Matthew. And I invite you to turn to it. If you've got it in your pew Bible, I believe it'll also be on the screen. Matthew is the first book in the New Testament. I like to call it the thin part of the Bible, the Newer Testament. One of 4 accounts that people gave of the life and ministry of Jesus. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. The crowd has gathered, and Jesus invites his disciples to come to him. And, originally as I was envisioning this scene unfolding in my mind, I pictured Jesus sitting on a rock, as many artists have over the years, and all of the people are kind of gathered down in the valley. And his disciples come up to him, and he seats them, he sits them down, and they're all nice and close, and Jesus begins to teach them. But then I had this image in my mind of Jesus gathering his disciples to him, and rather than all of them looking at him, Jesus invites them to turn around and look at the crowd, the masses that have gathered around. Thousands and thousands of people that have turned out to listen to this rabbi teach. And I imagine Jesus leaning up to them and whispering in their ear, do you see those people? They're blessed. Well, that's countercultural right there. Those aren't blessed people. Those are the underbelly of society. These are the people who aren't allowed to enter into the temple when they go visit Jerusalem. These are the broken people who you have to keep at arm's length. These aren't blessed people, Jesus. Jesus says, no. These are blessed. You see, Jesus sees them. Jesus saw the crowd, and they're more than just a multitude of people. He sees individuals in the midst of that. He sees their brokenness. He sees their pain. He sees them as they truly are. No pretense, no pretending. Jesus sees them. For some of us this morning, that might be the only good news you need. Because I want you to know Jesus sees you. Jesus sees your family in the condition that your family might be in. Jesus sees you as you receive that diagnosis. Jesus sees you as you face the uncertainty of tomorrow. Jesus sees you. You are not in Jesus' blind spot. Jesus sees you. As a church in this community, Jesus sees us. Jesus isn't ignorant to our existence, and we can't be ignorant to him. Jesus sees us. Jesus sees us, and Jesus says, blessed. Blessed. In the Greek, it's markios, a state of relationship and being with God in which the person is blessed simply by their association with God. We have a hard time with that, I think, in our society. We like to say, God bless us. God bless America. And it's a loaded term when we say that. Because when we say, God bless us, we say, God, we want you to heap on a little more prosperity into my life. Things aren't going quite as well as I would like them to. My bank account's not quite as strong as I would like it to. God, I want some more blessing. Would you bless me? Would you bless us? And I think that's what we say when we say, God bless whatever. But that's not what Jesus is getting at here. He says, you don't understand this markios, this blessing comes simply by the fact that Jesus sees us. Think through the Old Testament. Every time that the people would wander away from God and they would go off practicing foreign religions, turning their back on God, and calamity, hard times would fall upon them, and they would cry out to God, and then God would deliver them, and in that point of deliverance, they would rejoice because they knew that God saw them. And God was about to deliver them. Our blessing comes simply from the condition, that opportunity to be with God. God who is eternally wanting and eternally possessing. Think about that for a moment. Our God is eternally wanting. He's eternally wanting relationship with his creation. And he is eternally possessing in that relationship. This is the kind of God that we serve. A relationship that is based completely on the grace of God. Jesus saw the crowds, and Jesus declared, they are blessed. In the first 4 Beatitudes, we see a Christian's character that's really directed towards God. We see as Jesus begins this, he looks out at this crowd and he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who have no claim on God, I think is what poor in the spirit means. Blessed are those who don't show up to church on Sunday and say, well, God, I'm here. I got up on my day off. You owe me. You owe me, God. Blessed are those who have no claim on God. Blessed are those who see their own condition and say, God, I'm amazed that you would choose me. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Well, how this flies in the face of our entitlement society, that God's blessing rests on those who make no claim on God for themselves. In Jesus' own ministry, who do we see at the very center of it? Who are the kind of people? Prostitutes, tax collectors, common people. I look at that and I go, well, where are the pastors? right? Where are the priests? Where are the right-wing, zealous, religious nationalists? Where are they in following Jesus? And Jesus says, God's blessing is with the poor in spirit, those who make no claim on God, but whose hearts are open and seeking. Jesus sees the poor in spirit, and he says, the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. Those who make no claim on God as owing them anything, Jesus says they are blessed, and the kingdom of heaven is at your disposal. Blessed, Jesus said, are the mourners. Well, what is a mourner? A mourner is really someone who is dealing with the death of someone or something. Blessed are the mourners. Blessed are those who grieve. Blessed are those who are actively grieving the brokenness and the disparity of our world. Jesus says, blessed are they. Those whose eyes they are open to see the hurt and the pain that exists because of sin. Pastor Steve mentioned some of those in the prayer. We live in a broken world. And do we mourn? Do we mourn with those who grieve? Do we carry their burdens with our ears and with our actions? When I would go and visit the Congo, the covenant work there in the Democratic Republic of Congo, that is a people who know how to mourn. And all night, every night in the community of Bokonzo where I would stay, drums would be beating all night long, and people singing and people wailing. And I finally asked our host, I said, what on earth is going on all night long? And they said, those are people in communities that are mourning the loss of their loved ones. They mourn, they come alongside the grieving. They help carry the burden, and they mourn with them. Jesus says, blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are you when you recognize that the things that we so often carry around with us, that we hope are going to give us life, that we hope are going to fulfill the emptiness and the yearning and the longing in our hearts, but we recognize that we put that to death, or it is ripped from us, it is taken away. It's the death of a dream. It's the death of an identity. It's the death of a loved one. And within that, we have grief, we have mourning, we have pain. And Jesus looks into our life in the midst of that, and he says, you're blessed. You're blessed because Jesus is with you in that pain. When we give away the things that we're holding on to so tightly, we have room to embrace the hand of God. We're blessed, and blessed are the mourners. God's blessing rests on those who don't gloss over the pain of others, but who enter into that. Jesus himself, as he walks into Jerusalem, riding into Jerusalem, he weeps over the city, not because he knows he's about to be nailed to a cross, not because he knows he's about to be beaten within an inch of his life. He weeps over the city because he sees that it is a city whose heart is hardened to the work of God. And it has been for generations. Jesus mourns that, and he weeps over the city. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. If you're here mourning this morning, God is with you. God is with you. Jesus goes on and says, blessed are the meek. Blessed are the meek. If you're sitting next to somebody, I invite you to turn to them and think of the first animal that comes to your mind when I say the word meek. What animal comes to your mind when you think of meek? Go ahead and turn to that person and say, this is an animal that I think is meek. Somebody say ostrich? I love it. Boonk. All right. What did the person next to you say? What did they say? Shout it out. Mouse. Lamb. Ostrich. Ryan. Now he might smell like an animal, but In Roman and Greek understanding, you know what animal exemplified meekness? A war horse. A war horse exemplified meekness. They would say that horse is meek. And when they talk about meekness in a war horse, what they are understanding or what they're communicating is here is an animal who has tremendous power, but allows their rider to have authority over them. See, the war horse, you could sit on the top of that animal and it could buck you right off. It could trample you with its hooves. It could bite you and rip right through your clothing and into your flesh. These can be vicious animals. But a meek horse, a war horse, allows its rider to get onto that horse and to lead that horse into battle. That's the definition of meekness. Gentleness. Gentleness in the midst of chaos. A ferocity that's directed towards the enemy and not towards the one that's on the horse's back. Meekness. Meekness is not weakness like we associate in our culture now. That's not what Jesus is talking about. It's not somebody who just fades into the word work, someone who is unable to stand up for themselves. It's not someone who must either be defended or they're going to be taken advantage of. Jesus sees something else when he's talking about meekness. I've heard it said that meek people really have the truest sense of self. A meek person has the truest sense of self. See, they're not pretending to take something that is not theirs. In a word, they're mature. Aggressors seek to claim for themselves. They say, I want the world, I want this, therefore I'll go out and I'll claim it for myself. And history gives us a long list of men and women who do this kind of thing. But the Christian's character is one of gentleness. How is this possible? Because our power really comes from God. Jesus himself demonstrates this gentleness. In fact, I think the only time that I can think of Jesus really getting irritated to the point of violence is in the temple, pushing people out who had put themselves there as a barrier to coming to God. And he said, I won't tolerate this. And he drove them out. Otherwise, the very nature, demeanor of Jesus is one of gentleness. And we struggle with this. How could an all-powerful God who had the ability and the means to wipe out the whole earth once and who we believe is going to come and do it again as he brings victory and as we are delivered to our eternal home, how could such an all-powerful God come in the form of one so gentle? Meekness. Jesus says, blessed are you when you hunger and thirst for righteousness. Qualities of someone who hungers and thirsts. I think of someone who hungers and thirsts and they're desperate. They are desperate to be filled. I remember hearing stories and they just broke my heart of these mothers in Haiti who would mix mud with flour and bake bread for their children. You heard those stories? You heard about that? They don't have enough to eat, so they stretch the flour as far as they can, and so they just go out and they get dirt and dust and they bake it in with the flour. Of course, there's no nutritional value in that. A body cannot live on mud. But their hunger is so great that they're willing to fill their bellies with anything, even if it doesn't give them any sustenance. Their hunger is so great. We throw around terms like, oh, I'm starving. And I've seen starving. We're not starving. But Jesus looks out at this crowd and he says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, who hunger and thirst for that right connection to God. Blessed are those people who are starving for God. Blessed are they. Not the ones that just want a little morsel of God, those who want the fullest measure of God that they can grasp. That right relation, that connection to God. Blessed are those who desire justice in their world. Aggressors run over people left and right. We see that in our world, and we reward it too often as motivation or gumption, but it's just greed. Jesus says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. For they will be filled. I love going out to eat. My wife loves it even more when I take her out to eat, which doesn't happen very often. I apologize for that publicly in front of you. Yeah, there's a little confession going on here. I love going out to eat, right? And maybe many of you do here as well. You go out to eat, and one of the best parts about going out to eat is you don't have to cook it. And even better, you don't have to clean up after it. Somebody else does all of that. And in exchange for that, we give them money. We purchase our meal. We enjoy it. We pay for somebody else to clean it up. That's transactional in its nature. But an even better meal, in my opinion, is when somebody invites you over for dinner. And some of you have invited me over for dinner. You done good. It was good food that I got. And I'm not purchasing anything with that. You open your heart in your home to me or to others, and we invite one another in, and it's called hospitality, where we give freely. And when Jesus says they will be filled, this is speaking not of a transactional, not God, what can I do for you so that you can fill me up, but instead it's a hospitality of God that simply says, come. Come to the table. God has done it all, and we are invited. It's hospitality. It is big, it's enormous, and God says, if you are hungering and thirsting for a right connection to God, I invite you to come. Jesus looks out at the crowd who had been told for their entire lives, you're not good enough, you can't get to God, your pain is too severe, your condition is too critical. There is no room in the love of God for people like you. Jesus looks out and he says, you are blessed. Come to the table. He says to his disciples, he says to us, the church, look out into this community of Wilmer. There's a community full of people upon whom God's blessing rests. And if we truly want to be a blessed people, we are to go be with the blessed. Because that's where God's blessing resides. And it's a blessing of hospitality. Come and experience the hospitality of God. You will be filled. If you are somebody here this morning and you're saying, I have tried to be filled with anything and everything else in life and I'm still empty, try God. Try God. I stand before you as one of generations of people who have witnessed that God is sufficient. His generosity knows no bounds. His hospitality is true and genuine. A Christian's character towards God is based in an openness and a humility toward God. We don't have any claim on God. We don't. We're invited to mourn with those who mourn. The Christian's character towards God is one of gentleness and humility. We don't claim anything by force. And a Christian's character is one of longing for God's righteousness to be experienced in our own lives and in the lives of those that we come in contact with. God sees those in our midst. God sees you. God sees Wilmer. God sees those in the Netherlands. And he says, come to me. We are about to approach this table this morning. It is an invitation, and all are invited to this table. You're invited to this table not because you have to, but because you are invited. not because we have any claim on God, but that God has laid claim to us.